to turn it over to our real host for the night. Darlene Harrod is an ACLT board member, library volunteer, author, a retired federal employee, and one of the researchers for this project. So please help me in welcoming Darlene.
We are hoping that you will find this program is called the Local Black History Family Highlights for the Parkers Creek Heritage Project, that you will find it interesting and informative. So I'm going to start with some news that we have from ACLT. I'm going to tell you about the ACLT Land Acknowledgement and Pledge. During the fall, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee of the Outreach and Membership Committee wrote and edited the ACLT's new land acknowledgement, and it was approved by the Board of Directors at its November meeting. It will be placed throughout the ACLT media sites and read at formal meetings. The ACLT land acknowledgement is an important way to recognize our current understanding of the contributions of those who inhabited, cared for, and worked this land before us. The ACLT Land Acknowledgement and Pledge reads as follows. ACLT acknowledges that the land it stewards, including Parkers Creek and Governor's Run watersheds, is the ancestral home of the peoples of the Piscataway Confederacy and other indigenous peoples. Further, we recognize the people of African descent, enslaved and free, who once worked on our owned farms, the land of which is now stewarded by ACLT. We recognize the contributions made by these displaced and enslaved peoples in the face of injustice and inequity, and acknowledge our obligation to maintain the land and educate the public in such a way that their spirit and heritage are not forgotten. Accordingly, ACLT pledges to continue its fundamental mission of connecting all people to the land by providing equitable and inclusive access to the lands we steward through ongoing research and education about the land's inhabitants and their history, and through outreach to all, particularly those most affected by societal inequities. As a leader in land conservation and preservation, we strive by example to foster a feeling of belonging to this region and to ACLT for all its diverse communities, with the hope of a more equitable and sustainable future in nature for all. Did I just see the subcommittee chair come in? Stand and tell us your name.
If I must. Hello everybody, my name is Jose Ballesteros and I've been a Prince Frederick resident for the last 3 years.
Thank you.
Welcome.
He is the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee of the Outreach and Membership Committee. Thank you very much. Before talking about the Parkers Creek Heritage Trail, I would like to mention a few things about my family's connection to Parkers Creek. My dad, George Henry Broom Harrod, repeatedly told his children that his father, George William Harrod, was born in Parkers Creek. Sadly, Dad's father died when Dad was only 4 days old. Dad also repeated that his relatives were the Harrods, the Wallaces, and the Commodores of Parkers Creek. A few years ago, it put a big smile on my face when I found out from Gladys Wallace Jones that we shared the same great uncle, Uncle Roosevelt Harrod. Uncle Roosevelt was married to my father's mother's sister. He was indeed a favorite uncle of mine. So, what is this American Chestnut Land Trust Heritage Trail project? It will present the history of the Parkers Creek area to visitors through trails, signs, and web pages. ACLT has over 22 miles of trails, free to all. All are welcome, all belong. Although the project looks at all aspects of regional history, there is a special emphasis on African American families and experience. The contributions and successes of Black residents in the face of injustice and many obstacles have never been properly celebrated. This evening, we will present a few samples. Most project research was carried out from 2021 to 2023, and some continues as work proceeds. We have a loosely organized team with about a dozen workers, including Shirley Knight and myself, Kirsty Unalaw, and Carl Fleischauer, who will speak in a few minutes. Most of the team members are unpaid volunteers. I want to send a special shout out to Shelby Cohen. Does anybody know that name? Yes. Shelby is not officially a member, but she has provided excellent documents. Shelby has roots to the Harrods of Calvert County and currently lives in Philadelphia. The first signs and web pages were installed in December 2021. Many more are planned for 2024. Understand that we're going to have another gathering after all the signs are in place. We are grateful for the funding support from the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, part of the Maryland Historical Trust, and the Maryland State Department of Planning. This project is one element within the Southern Maryland Heritage Area. Is there anyone else in the room who has roots in Parkers Creek? Would you raise your hands? Yay! Thank you for coming tonight. Hey, don't leave without talking to us. Please, we would love to talk with you. Now, we will hear from Carl Fleischauer. He will tell the story of the Civil War soldier, Joseph Wallace, and his family. I might have mentioned this already, but Carl is a project volunteer and he is also a former ACLT board member. Carl?
Thank you, Darlene. That's a nice welcome and a terrific introduction, so thank you so much. The thing I'd really like to start, and I'm going to echo a little bit of what we heard from Darlene, is a couple of things. got me started on this particular topic. It was all news to me, and just as Darlene said, Shelby Cowan has done a terrific job of doing some detective work at the National Archives, and she turned up some invaluable source materials for this particular one. And I know Michael Kent's here, so I'll tip my hat to him. I benefited from the article he wrote about Civil War soldiers in the 2011 issue of the Calvert Historian, and it's worth saying the talk I'm doing is actually a summary of an article that I put together for the 2023 issue of the Calvert Historian. And with luck, the executive director, Josiah Wims, will be here and have a few copies for sale. This is a story about Joseph Wallace from Calvert County. He enlisted in the Union Army U.S. Colored Troops in 1864. One of his military records has this little note that I've circled, free, April 1961, which indicated that he was, to use the term of the time, a free black as of 1861, and that made him eligible for a $300 bounty above and beyond his pay. Wallace was wounded during the Battle of the Crater in Virginia. This battle included one of the largest concentrations of African American troops in the Civil War, and due to poor leadership by white officers, they suffered heavy casualties. Later in life, Wallace's leg injuries on Cemetery Hill qualified him for disability payments in addition to his regular pension. Some of what we know about Joseph Wallace comes from census and land records and a newspaper obituary, but the most significant information comes from pension files that Shelby Cowan found at the National Archives. Not online, you got to go there in person for these. These records tell us as much or more about Joseph's wife Arabella, since they also document her quest for a widow's pension after Joseph's death in 1909. In this deposition, part of the pension-seeking process, we learned that as a child, Arabella had come with her mother from Island Creek to Parker's Creek. A deposition from a woman named Lucretia Perrin tells us that Arabella was enslaved by a woman named Rebecca Howe Clare, who lived on a farm between Parker's Creek and the road to the steamboat landing, now called Darris Beach. Perrin states that Arabella lived with a slave named Jim Parker, who belonged to a family named Taylor and had been hired to work out for a Mr. Dare. And Perrin says Arabella had a child by Jim Parker named Mary. In her deposition, Arabella said, Jim Parker was working on the farm and came around to see me. I slept in the little log kitchen, which was separate from the house. There was a bed in there. He came in sometimes and slept with me in the kitchen. He had to get up very early to go to work. Rebecca Howe Clare asked me who the father was when Mary was born. I told her. She paid the doctor woman who delivered me. She had right smart to say, Miss Howe did, said I had done wrong. You might ask of the enslaver who really did the wrong here. Soon Jim Parker escaped his enslavement. We believe that he is this Jim Parker. Arabella said he was caught and sold to somebody down in Georgia, and I never heard from him anymore. Arabella emphasizes her lifelong bond with Joseph. Joseph H. Wallace and I lived together as man and wife until he died, she says. In the end, she got the pension. Her daughter Mary became part of the household by 1870, and soon the couple had a growing family. Joseph and Arabella were formally married in 1877. A pension deposition quotes Jerry Boots as saying he was, quote, present when the two were married to each other in the Parker Street Church. I heard the ceremony said by the preacher, Reverend Charles Walker. We assumed this was an early version of the Methodist Church, later known as Brown's. In the 1880s, Joseph Wallace bought his first property, about 60 or 70 acres, located north of Parker Street, and the family moved to their new farm. By the way, a lot of the place names on there are today's place names, not the 1880 ones. In 1901, Joseph Wallace bought a second property, deeded as containing about 200 acres. We're just a little uncertain about the boundaries, but this map is our best guess. During his life, Joseph Wallace made valuable contributions to his community. He was a trustee for both Parker Street School, established with support from the Freedmen's Bureau, and the church. The 1867 deed for the school lot was not properly executed, and it was redone in 1884, and the school lot was then conveyed to, quote, the trustees of the Methodist Episcopal Church for Parker Street, later known as Brown's. Wallace is named as a trustee on both deeds, school trustee and church trustee. Joseph Wallace was also a member of the Order of Galilean Fishermen, a benevolent society that established homes for orphans, the elderly, provided funds for the sick and widows and funerals. After the Civil War, Calvert County was home to a few Galilean fishermen tabernacles, one of which was associated with Brown's Church, as you can see in this Calvert Gazette announcement from 1911. Later in life, Wallace's health began to fail. In March 1908, he sold 100 acres of land to Arabella's childhood friend, Mary Brooks. Relying on circumstantial evidence, we believe that another 20 acres of land was transferred to Joseph and Arabella's son, William. William moved to Baltimore, and the land was lost for non-payment of taxes, but after an intervening owner, it was bought by the Sims family, whose heirs and descendants still own it today. Joseph Wallace passed away in 1909. His funeral at Brown's Church received notice in the Calvert Gazette, giving his age as 73, indicating a birth year of 1836. Quote, the Order of Galilean Fishermen, of which the deceased was a member, and many others attended the funeral. Arabella sold 2 small lots after Joseph's death, one to the Galilean fishermen, probably for a building, but we've not turned up evidence that it was ever constructed. After Joseph's death, his son Daniel took over the farm on the remaining 150 acres. But as the Depression began, taxes were not paid. And in 1934, the land was sold at courthouse auction to the physician Hugh Ward, Dr. Hugh Ward. Daniel continued to live on the property as Ward's tenant farmer. Responding to the Depression, the state of Maryland established a board of aid and charities with county-level offices. Daniel Wallace received what was called relief. The terms of this were pretty burdensome, to say the least. Daniel was provided with a workhorse that he had to pay back the full cost in 15 months. He had to agree to plant, harvest, cure, and market a specified crop of tobacco. And what were called slack seasons, he was obliged to work on a county job for 30 cents an hour. Not much relief, if you ask me, but the impact on Daniel Wallace was short. He passed away in 1936 at the age of 59. I regret ending this story with kind of a sad ending, but thank you for listening. And Darlene, let me turn it back to you.
We're getting ready to show a video. Shirley Knight and I interviewed Mrs. Yvonne Mason Wills, and Mrs. Ruth Becky Parker Harrod. Kirsty interviewed my nephew, Sean Harrod. So we'll get to the video now.
Hello, my name is Sean Harrod. Born and raised in Calvert County, 1971, February 27, 1973. I guess the interest to the history starts with our roots. You know, I like to say, you know, your story never starts with you. It always starts long before you. And it all makes up who we are, so that we're kind of like an amalgamation of the people before us. They develop our sense of self even before we even know who we really are. And so they're pieces of us. Well, I'll just say this, there are a whole lot of people sitting in this chair. A lot more than Sean. I think that they're pieces of all of these people that came before us that make up who I am. Even my DNA says it. And so with that being said, I think that's what kind of sparked my history, my hunger for history, because, you know, I'd hear pieces of things my grandfather said or my maternal grandfather said, and you start to put the pieces together, and then you start to hear the stories, and then you listen to other people's stories, and your stories kind of start to intertwine. Either they sound alike or they're actually connected. And so these connections spark this interest, almost like electricity. It's just this, the connectivity becomes conduction, you know, so it's conduit. And before you know it, you know, there's this life, I don't know, it's its own living, breathing organism. And and even though it's past, it's still present because it makes up the present. And I hope I'm not talking in circles, but you feel where I'm coming from? And, I think the earliest story I remember my grandfather saying to me, he said he remembered his, I guess it would have been his great grandfather, who was a slave, and his name was Jake Broom. And he said to me, he said he's a high class Negro. He said he was the first person to write his name on the Freedmen's Bureau in slavery. And he said he actually remembered him to the place where he was there present while he was growing up. And that kind of like got me, you know. And then my maternal grandfather could just begin to rattle off his family tree back to slavery.
In public service, 1934.
Okay. Where did you go to school?
I went to Falcon Creek School, and then I went to Olive Creek, which was Brooks High School.
Oh, right, Brooks High School. Did you work? Did you work?
Yeah, I worked most of all my life right on Sun Cliff.
Doing what?
Just housekeeping, and I always set up tables and polished silver, and you know, did personal, been set up porters and things. Yeah, when I started working, I was 12 and wasn't quite 13, because they had built Sun Cliff Service Company in 1937, but I wasn't old enough to work then. But Mr. Gravett, he was the head man that built started Sun Cliff, is a hobby. And he had a mother, and we all black called her Granny Gravett. And Granny Gravett was too old to leave in the house by herself. And we didn't have a regular phone. We had the phone that we could just call around the community. So Ms. Miles was Mr. Gravett's sister. She asked my mother to let me come down and sit and help Granny Gravett, so Granny Gravett wouldn't be alone So when she went different places, that if anything happened to Granny Gravis, that I could always contact her and tell her to come home. And when I started working there, my mother was a woman that know how to do most of everything and was a good housekeeper. And when I started working there, I wasn't there no time, so they had me doing everything. They had me making the roasted lamb. They had me making cream potatoes. You put your butter and milk in there and cut the potatoes and cook them, and then put them in them cream potatoes. They had me chopping corn and boiling the corn. And they had me slicing tomatoes. And on the porch they had a table facing the water. Had me setting up the table, because I know how to set the table, for 16 people. Wow. And serve them on Saturday when I wasn't even 13. And I worked there up until I got married.
Uncle Charles. And so they built a house in there in the 80s. Before then, he lived off of Stokely Road, farm on a tract of land and sharecropped the weather, which was fun too, you know. But when he moved to Parkers Creek, there was a development, small housing development that just kind of came in there and off of what they call it, I think it's Bicentennial Court. And you could tell that there had to be a meshing of societies there, because these people were outsiders coming inside of their, you know, what they called the creek was its own place, you know. Even to this day, you know, it's still its own place, you know. And I remember my cousins saying, you know, they had to take a little bit of time to get acclimated to the society because they were different, and they say, you know, because they were outsiders, even though their families were from there, that there had to be some adjustments. They had to get sort of kind of get vouched for, which is weird because when they came there, because they had been separated for so long, they were under the impression that there were separate Herods. Yeah, that there was this one set and we were this one set. You know, and that's never the case here.
Well, tell us who's buried up at Browns United Methodist Church in your family.
All right, our stepmother made it, and my dad. Then the next was my brother Harold. He went to Sixers Road down here at Barber Way, but we buried him out there because he named after Daddy. Then I buried Leroy out there. Leroy's funeral was preached down here at Carl Weston.
And who was Leroy?
My husband.
The one he married.
Him.
I know, but they want it for the record.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's buried out there. Then Clover lost her son. You know, that's that money in there. And he's buried out there, Trayvon Wills. And then we bought Carl there. Now we could have buried Carl other places, but we wanted the family to be together.
I have to say, it was so much fun talking to Mrs. Harrod and Mrs. Wills. I've known Mrs. Wills practically all of my life, but Mrs. Harrod was such a joy. And all that noise you heard in the background, we were there on Christmas Eve in 2022. And it was some kind of cold. But those daughters of hers, two of her daughters, Faye and Gloria, were in the kitchen getting the Christmas dinner prepared. come back in the room and help us fill in some of the questions that maybe Mrs. Harrod, didn't get. But let me tell you, Mrs. Harrod was so sharp.
Yeah.
She was correcting them. Sadly to say, Mrs. Harrod passed on December 25th, happens to be my birthday, 2023. Before we left, Shirley and I left, we said, can we come back and talk to you some more? We really did want to go back and see her again, but it didn't happen. By the way, is Francis Harrod here? Thank goodness to Frank. He talked his mother into letting us interview her. He's the baby boy's man. And he's accompanied tonight, I believe, by his wife, Deidre. Okay, Deidre's here. So, what else do I want to say about these wonderful interviews? Of course, Sean is just, he's a great guy. I can't tell you how nice Sean is. I just can't explain it. He's just wonderful. And Mrs. Wills, I go by to see her from time to time, just because I want to. And her birthday is coming up on March 11th. She'll be 93 years old. So I have to go by soon to see her. So we're at the place where we're going to have questions and answers. And let me remind Gladys that if she would like to say something about Browns United Methodist Church and the grant, that she certainly has an opportunity to do that.
Wonderful.
Good evening. I wasn't prepared to speak this evening, but I'm always prepared to share good news.
Yeah.
So, the old Browns United Methodist Church off of Parkers Creek Road, 1710 Parkers Creek Road, Port Republic, Maryland, 20676. That's the address. So, that church is a church that many of us have roots there. Many people buried in that cemetery were standing on their shoulders today. So over the years, the church became inactive in 1972. I worked with the Baltimore Washington United Methodist Conference. They deeded the church to me on February 14, 2019. I've been working hard, praying. My knees are sore because I've prayed and stayed on my knees, trying to get money to restore the church. So I'm happy to say that we have received the grant for $250,000. And we will be starting the work hopefully coming soon. I met with the state today to talk about next steps, but I couldn't do this without many of you here. So there's so many people to thank, but there's just a couple of people that I want to personally thank. Kirsty, and I want to thank Greg Bowman, because without them, we would not have been able to do this. I mean, we tried 2 years before, we didn't get it. The first 2 years, it was $100,000, we didn't get it. We tried the third year, and the third year was $250. So good things come to those.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be applying for another grant, even though I haven't started with the first one yet, to get a second one. So between the two should be enough to complete the entire project. The building is being repurposed as a multicultural heritage center for all of us to be able to use. So more information will be forthcoming, and I will keep you informed as I get more information. So thank you for all your support.
Now it's time for the Q&A period. Any questions?
Where was Parkers Creek School located?
Okay, he asked where was Parker's Creek School located? Do you know, Carl? Okay.
It's a very short distance south of Brown's Church, if you know where Brown's Church is. And it's a lot that has now come into private ownership, and I think there's a private residence built on it. And it's worth recommending Mary Rockefeller's book about schools in Calvert County, which is an excellent compendium, and it has a map that will show you right where it is.
Okay.
There's a cabin on ACLT property, the Wallace cabin. Is that connected with the Wallace family that you were just speaking of?
Yes, that house was owned by Lemuel Wallace.
And what is that relation to Joseph?
I'm proving I spent more time on the census records than anybody else. We would love to have more information. That's my way of saying we don't know for sure. Lemuel was born in the 1850s, and his father was, I'm going to say Basil, but I don't know if they said Basil or Basil. And he was born, I don't know, 1810 or 1820, something like that. And I've never quite figured out whether he was a free black or enslaved. Joseph Wallace, we have two competing versions of who his parents were. The pension record depositions name a couple whose first names escape me that I've never found a trace of in any census records, and I'm wondering if there isn't something garbled. The census records point to a mother who goes into the 1840 census as a free black woman, Jane Wallace, and by 1860 she turns up with a husband then named David, so it's possible that Jane and David Wallace. But that, again, is people who were born in around 1810 or something like that, and connecting the dots between the Basil branch, or Basil branch, and the whatever their names are branch we've never been able to do. It's hard not to imagine that the families aren't related, we just haven't found the link.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
As you hike the Parker's Creek Loop Trail, on the right-hand side in a couple of places you see some rundown buildings. Have any of those been linked to the Wallace family? Or?
Yeah.
Embarrassed to say, I'm having trouble remembering where the Loop Trail is. Let me see, Greg, help me
North
out.
side.
Which is the Loop Trail?
North side.
It'd be Parker Street Road Trail, and then
Oh.
Creek, and then Turkey Trail.
Okay, the Turkey Trail, actually this is a good question, because I'll follow up with a question back. There's a very dilapidated structure, part of which is a log building on the Turkey Trail, and it was the home of the Scales family. And the leading member of the Scales family was a man named John Walter Scales, who died in the 1940s. He was there in the teens and 20s. And, sorry, I'm not getting close enough to it. And we have not encountered relatives of John Walter Scales. It's interesting, he turns up, he was a storekeeper and ran some kind of a little lunch counter or lunch restaurant in Prince Frederick. I'm indebted to Michael Kent for that information from his book about the county. And, sorry. Anyway, that particular building is the John Walter Scales house, let's put it that way. And it's an extremely interesting piece of architecture, and it's a darn shame that it's completely collapsed.
questions? There must be more questions for Carl.
Well, actually, you should see whether people here would like you to come around and visit
Oh,
them for
yeah,
an interview.
that would be fun. Are there any people here who would like for me to come around and interview you? We'd love to come by. It doesn't have to be Christmas Eve, but we'll come by. Just say when. Just raise your hand.
And you can, there's actually a sign-up sheet outside to get more information about the Parkers Creek Heritage Trail, but there's a column to check if you would like to share information about family you know or what other stories you have at Parkers Creek. But Calvert Library also has an oral history project, and so we will also take your stories. We have some volunteers working on that project. Is Brett here? Brett is here. Brett is one of our volunteers. I don't know if Brittany's here or not. Oh, Brittany's here. Yes, that's right. I saw her earlier. So we have some volunteers working on that project. So if you have stories to share, check that box. And I see someone in the back has something to say. If I can get to you.
I actually have a question. I wasn't here early, so maybe you all have already gone over this. Was there any information about how the Harrod family got into Parkers Creek? How the Harrods got? I'm asking because I'm one.
Yeah, I'm one too. And the answer is, I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know, but I do know some married into Parkers Creek. So my mother was a Harrod.
Where'd your mother come from?
My mother came from Plum Point.
Oh, good.
And she married my father, who was Cephas Wallace. So that's how she was from Plum Point. She was the Boots.
Oh, wonderful.
So
yeah, my father and mother both were born in Plum Point. So, but like I said, my father's father died when he was only 4 days old, so we just didn't have a lot of connection to what was going on in Parkers Creek way back then.
So I would also like to say, if you have relatives or loved ones that are buried at Brown's United Methodist Church, let me know. Because I would love to have that information to include in the multi-purpose center when it's completed. So if you have loved ones, many of the grave sites there don't have headstones. So we don't know everybody that's buried there. So if you know loved ones that are buried there, let me know.
Well, I just got my grandfather's death certificate, and it said he was buried at Parkers Creek Church. So that's you. So he's one, George William Harrod. I don't know what else you need on him, but definitely.
Yeah, if you have a copy of his death certificate, any of that, I would love to have that to include in the archives.
You're welcome. I'll get it to you.
And if you need my email address or telephone number, I'll be happy to give it to you. Thanks.
So there were Boots in Plum Point. You say Gladys. Your mother was a Boots.
Yes.
I went to school with some Boots. You remember Darlene Boots? She may have been called something else. She's on the school website. I'll have to let you know if she's under another name on the Sewell website. And she lived on Dares Beach Road. Her mother is Campbell. Campbell, what's her first name? May Campbell. Yes. Apparently, some of the Harrods, well, I'm only going to use the bridge. You know, there used to be a bridge back in the day. So I guess somehow or another they came over that bridge and came up to Plum Point. They got there because Hilton is here. Hilton's family lived in Plum Point. His father is Owen Harrod Sr. So my grandfather and Hilton's grandfather went to Plum Point to live. I guess because of the industries there and the fishing, the farming. My father grew up on the Neal estate and did sharecropping. Yes, Randy.
Did y'all notice the difference in the pronunciation of names
Yes.
Like, I think you use the bougie version, the Harrod.
No, I use.
Right? But Delonte was saying Harrod, right? And then other people say hard. So the Harrod part was kind of new for me. Because when we were in school, Delonte always said
Yes.
hard or
Yes.
hard.
Yes.
So that's like the last couple of years, the Harrod for me, back in France. So I was wondering, you all know why it's like 3 different pronunciations.
Well, the reason why I say Harrod is because of the department store in London, England.
I said the bougie but I did want to share something because my cousin Becky Hart that was on the video that who did show. But I wanted to share with you that her great-grandmother is Susan Jane Skinner Parker, which is my great-great-grandmother. And I have a picture of her. And it's very hard to see from here. But she was actually born in 1840 in Parkers Creek, and she passed away in 1927. And she was known to have 18 children. And that's why, like, most of my cousins, like, we're all related. The Hards. Cousin Becky Hard was actually a Parker. She married a Hard, but she got the Parker blood. So, hurrah. I always said Harrod. So, my great-grandmother, this is her death certificate in 1927, and it said that she was buried in Parker's Creek as well. However, my great-grandfather, David Parker Jr., and my great-grandmother, they're in Parker's Creek, right there up front, my grandfather's father. So I have a slew of family there, and like I said, she had 18 children in Parker's Creek. So there's no doubt in my mind that everybody's child returning is related. Except for me and my husband. We did the DNA. I was prepared to be related to my husband because we don't have any children together, but thank God we're not related at all. We even have same relatives, but we're not related. DNA says that we're not related, so I'm pretty glad about that.
Thank you, Randy Parker. Niles. Thank you, Mr. Niles. And Mr. Niles is from Dares Beach, by the way, and Parker's Creek.
And Parker's Creek. We moved to Parker's Creek in 1980.
You moved to Parker's Creek in 1980.
In 1980, and we moved to the Bicentennial Court section that Sean was talking about. And growing up in Parker's Creek, I remember I was about 12, and we visited the woods in Parker's Creek. And we visited the creek in Parker's Creek. And I remember just trekking through the woods and going up there. And the people that I became friends with in Parker's Creek, they really did accept us in. And we were outsiders, but they did accept us in. And Frank back there, hey Frank. Yeah, so I just remember going up to Parker's Creek, and it was all great. You know, I still have a lot of friends there. A lot of us moved out, but we're still friends. We still keep in touch with each other. I just want to say, I'm from Parker's Creek.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wondered, were the transcripts from your oral histories are going to be available? Have they been transcribed, or
They have been transcribed. Are they going to be available?
Yeah. We have to build the website. Once the darn thing gets built, there'll be links to the full-length transcripts for sure.
We got to build the website first, and then there will be links to the transcripts.
At the beginning of your presentation, you asked audience members if anybody had a connection to Parker's Creek, and a number of hands went up. Could we hear some of those stories? We've had a couple from the audience, and yours as well. And I wonder if some people would like to share their stories.
I was trying to get Dolores' mother's interview. We talked about it. Remember Dolores?
We did talk about it,
We, sadly, her mother has passed too. So your mother and Miss Becky were tight, right?
They were tight.
Really good friends.
Yes.
And then I think probably Gladys's mother as well.
Gladys' mother was her sister-in-law.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you heard the question, Dolores and others. Did you want to say anything about growing up in?
I have the mic back here, Ms. Darlene.
All right, Ms. B.
I am going to ditto Sean's story and Gary. We went to Parker Creek in the 80s also, and Bicentennial Court is where we live. And Frank and his little friends and everybody, they told us straight up, we don't belong. Y'all need to get out of here. Y'all don't belong here. But eventually we became great friends. Frank's mom, Becky, she was awesome cook. That's why her girls are such a great cook. But she taught me to do the rice pudding about maybe 6 years ago. And I haven't mastered it, but it is great. And I like to, but so many stories that I could tell you about. Running down the hills, going to Gate Egg, going to Simon's Cliff, the White Horse, Frank's brother, Richard Parker, Cleo's brother, all the Parker Street family, we became very close. Eventually I married Woodrow Wallace's son, 29 years ago. Grandson. But we became great friends with Parker Street, and we no longer were outsiders, but for a long time we were outsiders.
That was B. Weems speaking. She's married to Bucky Weems. He's in the book.
Yeah.
I'm just going to
Bucky.
Food was a theme there. You might mention your cookbook.
Oh, thank you so much for reminding me.
Every one of y'all. I'm Cleo Parker, sister of Bruce Parker, called Becky, Aunt Helen May, my both grandfather Cephas and Hattie, and all. And I grew up in Sinus Cliff. My uncle, my grandfather, all of them raised tobacco. I can remember going over what we call grandmother. That is up past out that gate, make up left and go all the way back around. And they had a big barn when the hurricane blew it down. But the field all was there, and it was told to me as young growing up that houses was all along that side was Commodore, because my grandmother's house was up on the hill where we used to go collect bricks to put in our bed, put them on the stove, eat them, wrap them in a towel, and warm ourselves up in the winter. And all of those good things. But all during my lifetime, up until the present, all of that was consisted of Wallace and Commodore Lane. One would join one from another. From that point down across, we call Big Swamp, what brought you up where Aunt Nettie and Alan used to live, and all of them. And so all around where Bicentennial Court, where it connected, that was all. Wallace and Commodore, when I was growing up, never heard of all of this other stuff till I'm out of here. Coming up, Cook Parker, we used to go back there. And houses were back there also where my grandfather, father, them all lived back in, they're from where my grandfather resided at, and with T-Core had the house now. But you turn and go back on that hill, it was called Cook Parker Place. And all of those memories, all of those things that we were taught and were told back in the day, where we used to go down Dock that and go down, like we go into Grandmammy, and make a right and go down to the creek. We would take my Uncle Woodrow build a boat, and Joy Boy, Phyllis, and Sam Lee and I, we went out in the creek and came around to Dr. Jet. mother was telling me how we got connected, who was this, who was that, and all, so we would know our family. And then Cousin Richard, down Elm Creek, and all, how we was all brought together. And up in Pasadena, a lot of our family left there and went up there. And they all had the same name because the name was carried over and over. Had it, Bella, had it, we had it, all those things, how life traveled, our family now. You got heard all kinds of names. Some of them I ain't never heard of them. So life, but it is what it is. Because we changed to a new and different, what you want to call it, history, things, how things have progressed. Like the computer, the cell phone, all of those things. But what we had, a chain, a phone that had everybody inside a clip, all connected. You had to wait till that person get off the phone. We used to tell them, y'all want to hear us? We would ask them, is the refrigerator running? And they would say, yes. We say, you better go catch it. That's how we get them off the phone, so we could make a call. But, you know, we all shared the Sinus Pit folks that up on the hill from Sinus Pit, which beyond Dr. Jet called Calvert Street, but we live in the center where they say it is Sinus Cliff. Put it all together. That's how they just changed the name and document things in the courthouse back in the day and up until now, you know. And it's a blessing, you know, to know our roots, where we came from. Yes. Because I heard them in the camel. My mother told us who our family was. And she told us that camel was related to her. They were first cousins, the Hard, and just a big family. We all family, because we all realized we talking about this earthly family, but we all in God family. Yeah. And everybody we got to love one another no matter what. And all the history is going to go on and on. But Jesus is the first one. And he's the head of all of us. I don't know if y'all want to agree with me, but to God be the glory. Right. That's right. Amen. Lord. I love Jean Hayes. She's a good friend of mine. And I love, she's a girl. She loves my brother, my family, and the Scots, all of them. They play a big role in our family because those people we work for. I remember working with my sister Becky. And just look, 25 cents was a lot of money. But we could go to Earl up and buy a bunch of candy. Go to the store now. You can't even get a little piece or a peppermint patty. You know? But it's like this. And I'm going to go. I'm going to stop. Thank you. So Paul interviewed me. I'm in one of the books.
Thank you, Cleo. Thank you, Cleo.
Great message. She says, tell your story, share your story. Listen to Cleo.
Listen to Cleo. Now you know, Robin, Cleo. Yes, she's in the book.
What do you mean when you say in the book?
This is the first draft of the book called The African American Community of Parkers Creek, circa 1800 to 1960. So it's not really available to everybody. I don't think we made a lot of copies, but maybe if you give us an interview, we'll consider giving you a book. Okay. And Carl says it's free online, so make sure you get one of the handouts.
the front of the book, the front of the handout that he has, it has the link for this book, the first draft. Again, you can tell your stories, it's going to get longer. But on the back of the book are 2 books that Darlene authored for the library on inspiring African American men and inspiring African American women in Calvert County. So also available online, or you can purchase from the library.
So since we're talking about books, the latest book that my team and I produced is a cookbook for the American Chestnut Land Trust. It's on sale today in the lobby here. I would really, 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 really appreciate it if you bought a copy tonight. And you can pay by cash, check, get a QR code. We have the flyer with the QR code. Some of you have already bought our book. I thank you very much, but you might consider getting more for Christmas gifts for next year.
Is that rice pudding recipe in there?
Do we have a rice pudding recipe? I can't remember if we have a rice pudding recipe in there, but I have my lemon pound cake recipe in there. And we have woodchuck gumbo. You know what woodchuck is? A groundhog. And we have smothered muskrat. So we have a variety of recipes in that book, and we got a lot of recipes from the local folks. So we have a lot of local recipes in there. But if you don't want those recipes, we listen. I made sure we had a lot of recipes in there that were for greens and salads and vegetables. And the latest and greatest recipe I just made from the book is called sweet potato and turnip comfort casserole. It is delicious.
But are there any bougie recipes in there?
Oh yeah, oh, of course. I'm sure there are. We have 277 recipes in the book in 8 different category types. So please consider getting a cookbook. Thank you very much. Anything else?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Phyllis Harrod Dawkins, and I too got it from the Harrod store. So growing up, my grandfather was Cephas Wallace. My uncle Woodrow, that's in the book. Growing up as a child, we grew up. People thought money, but love. We shared crops. My grandfather was a gardener. He had watermelon on my door. We'd go in the watermelon field in the summer, and my grandfather would actually mark the ones that he was going to pick, the ripe ones. So we as kids would go down in the field and kind of open up ourselves, not without any kind of knife or anything. We just kind of busted them up and ate them. So we got in trouble a lot growing up. My grandfather also had a beehive. He raised his own honey. So we would go and get gravels from off the road and actually throw the gravels at the beehive. Some of us got stung, some of us got away. So growing up with my grandparents, Mom, we call her Mom, but Hattie Wallace, she was a cook. She was excellent. She could have had her own restaurant. That's how good they were. And my mother, Helen Mae Harrod, Helen Mae Wallace Harrod, she was an excellent cook. And you talking about rice pudding? There's none to compare. My mother's rice pudding could have gone in your book as well. But as kids, we did things. That's why a lot of our family, Uncle Dickie, Winsco Wallace, was a builder. He built many homes in the Scientist Cliff area. Still standing today. He put his mark on the fireplaces. If you go in Scientist Cliff, there's fireplaces that my Uncle Dickie actually built. So a lot of our boys, our cousins, they were carpenters when they didn't even know they were carpenters, because as kids they would build little houses. We made our own go-karts. We could put bikes together that were broken. So growing up, we had a rich life. And the love that was shared, going even back then, the outhouse, and my grandmother's sister. Well, she adopted me, so I would follow her wherever she needed or wherever she was going. I would be the little kid following her to the little outhouse or whatever. But even those things as kids, it only made us better. That's who we are today. We came out of a rich family. Uncle Cephas Wallace, my grandfather, took no stuff. You either had respect. If you didn't have respect, my grandfather knew what the hand was. I know because he got me once or twice. But you learn from that. And I am thankful to growing up in Scientist Cliffs and going down to the water. Dr. Jet was another property that was my grandfather's. And Dr. Jet would always have company. And it didn't matter to us whether he had company or not. When we wanted to go down to the beach, we go to Dr. Jet's and says, listen, can we go down? Not today, he said, because we have company. But anyway, we would work our way down to the water when we got, when we had the permission to do so. So back in the day, all of us, anybody that was from Scientist Cliff, we had a rich life. My grandmother raised, when she did her vegetables or whatever in the summer, we actually have to peel the apples and whatsoever have you. And that's why we are the best cooks that you could ever want to today. Anybody from Scientist Cliff, ask them. They will at rice pudding, cakes. We got it all from our parents and those that instilled in us respect. And that's why today there's so much richness in Scientist Cliffs. So thank you so very much. I'm honored to have spoken tonight because Uncle Dickie, Uncle Woodrow, Hattie Wallace, all of them instilled in us some richness.
Thank you, Phyllis. Phyllis and Deloise are sisters. So would you all consider doing an interview?
Yes.
An interview, Sister Dolores?
Of course.
So I'll remind you all that there is a sign-up sheet outside the room. You can put down that you will be interviewed or that you want more information on this project. So, yeah, please do.
Oh, I do remember now that we do have a rice pudding recipe in the cookbook. It's from my pastor, Bishop Robert D. Watts.
Have you tried it?
No, I haven't tried it.
Maybe we need a rice pudding competition.
I'm really not into rice pudding all that much. If there are no more questions, we will be adjourning, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I'll just say, first of all, I'm going to say, food matters, stories matter, community matters. And thank y'all for coming today and sharing about this community. And I hope this sharing continues and that you keep telling your stories and keep talking to each other. Even if you don't do an interview with us, tell it to your family members, tell it to your friends, pass it on because it really counts. And thank you so much to Darlene, to Shirley, who's not here, to Carl, to Kirsty, to Jose, all of those and there's still cookies in the back. So thank y'all for coming tonight.